Welcome to the Effortless Swimming Podcast, the show that helps swimmers and triathletes love the water, become a better swimmer, and live a better life. Here's your host, Brenton Ford.
Welcome to the Effortless Swimming Podcast. This is episode number 128 with my guest, Solomon Wright, who most recently became the New Zealand 10-kilometre open water champion. Solomon was on the podcast last year after he won the Rottnest channel. And in the last 12 months, he's put a lot of work into his strength, into his stroke, and also his fitness. And we'll talk more about that on the podcast. But there's also a YouTube video that accompanies this podcast where we do a before and after of Solomon's technique. Because after the Rottnest channel swim where he was having issues with his shoulders, but he managed to come out and win that event in record time. But those injuries were still quite fresh to him. And we have a look at what are some of the things in his stroke that he was doing that he wanted to change. And we also have the after video that was recorded just a couple of weeks ago. And you'll really see a significant difference in his catch, his alignment, his recovery, and a few other aspects of the stroke. So head on over to the YouTube channel, which is the Effortless Swimming YouTube channel. Take a look at that accompanying video. And it's quite interesting to see the progression and the development at that very top level. It's obviously a lot less or a lot more minimal changes that we see with swimmers who don't have that same level of experience behind them. But there's still some significant changes that you do see there. So it doesn't matter what level you're at, there's always things that you can work on. So take a look at the video on YouTube. So let's get into the podcast. This is Solomon Wright talking about what he's changed, what he's focused on in the last 12 months to get to such a good place in terms of much less injury. He's a lot fitter than where he was and what's next for him. Let's get into it. So Solomon, welcome to the podcast. This is the second time I've had you on, and the most recent thing you've done is you've just won the New Zealand 10K open water champ. So congratulations and welcome.
Thank you so much. It's really good to be back. I'm happy to have a chat with you. Thanks again for the weekend. I'm really excited and really happy with the result, and looking forward to the next year.
So we caught up after Rotto. So we both competed at Rotto, and you won in a new record time. And then a couple of weeks later, I came up to the Gold Coast and we did some filming because I thought it'd be really good to see what your stroke looks like and see what we can take from that and teach to the swimmers that come along to our clinics and online. And then again, more recently, just a couple of weeks ago, we did another filming together up on the Gold Coast. And there's been quite a bit of stuff that you've been working on since the very first filming that we did just post Rotto. And I mean, you were saying that your times had come down as a result of, I guess, that and fitness and less injury and everything. And I thought it'd be interesting to just talk about what are some of those things that you had focused on over the last 12 months, just in terms of the technical stuff of your stroke.
Well, after Rotto last year, my shoulders were quite injured, and I was dealing with a bit of injury going into Rottnest and then again coming out of it. So that was my main focus. So I've been looking at my stroke from after the first time with you and looking at how my shoulder flexibility and my mobility and the strength of all of that rotation stuff going through my stroke. And I really analyzed that and then took that to my physio and to my coaches and really set out a plan to, just get stronger so I could become faster in the water. And that's really worked over the last year. I've had a rocky year with my shoulders up and down, as injuries tend to do, but the last 6 months has been solid, and I've been slowly building that strength that I need, and my times have come down accordingly. So pretty happy with the last year.
And what are some of those specific exercises and areas that you've been focusing on?
Well, my catch was quite low off the first video. I'm sure you remember. It was quite low because I just didn't have that strength or the flexibility to reach a little bit higher and grab more pulling through my stroke. So I've worked on getting that higher, and then I've worked on just through the basic physio exercises, the basic rotator cuff stuff, and just the basic gym rowing exercises to get that strength through my whole back and all around to support my shoulder in that pull through. So I'm pulling more water with more ease.
And I'm going to do a YouTube video on this, looking at the differences and the changes over the last 12 months, because there's some sort of, it looks like there's been some flow-on effects from that extra strength and working on that part of your catch as well. It looked like it made a big difference with your alignment and your recovery and a bit to do with the rotation as well. So when all of that comes together, it seems like the other aspects that you may not necessarily be focusing on, they tend to improve as a result of that too. And it's
absolutely.
it's really quite evident. And and winning the New Zealand 10K champs the other week is a really good result. So you mentioned just before the call that that's unlike the pool nationals. It's not you win and you're on the team. It's a selection process. So can you talk a little bit about what's the process now from here to go on and swim at a World Cup or international competitions?
So I think I'm unsure, obviously. It's all subject to selectors' discretion, really. They have to decide based on funding and lots of other influencing factors and who they send where and whether or not I will be allowed to go. But I think I will be allowed to go to a World Cup next year and go back on the international circuit for some international race practice, really, and to, jump back on that circuit, which I'll be really, really happy to do because that's what I did back before my shoulder injury. I was at that level. So I'm really pleased to be back at that level. And then I'm racing again next week at Australian Championships for the second part of my selection onto World Championships. So hopefully I do well next weekend, and then hopefully I'll be off to World Championships. But who knows? It's all up to selectors, and I'll just do my best and see how that goes.
And when it comes to some of the training sessions that you've been doing, you wrote down some of the workouts that you've done, and I mean half of some of the main sets is like a full session for most people. So there's some pretty massive sets that you've done, and I think it'd be good to talk through a couple of maybe the harder ones that you've done over the last couple of months, because when I read them, I thought, Jesus Christ, well, next time I'm training for Rottnest or a really big swim, I've really got to up my game and up the distance that I'm doing in some of these sets, because they're pretty impressive. So what were the 1, 2 or 3 workouts that you found were probably the most challenging?
Well, actually, speaking of the hard workouts, over Christmas, I went home to see my family back in Perth and spend time with my old coach back there, training there, keeping my fitness up. And they did an open water camp, and we were doing a huge amount of Ks. We did over the Christmas period, like including Christmas Day and New Year's and stuff. I think over 3 weeks we did maybe 210, 215 Ks, somewhere around that region. So it's like 70 to 80K weeks, and it just absolutely smashes you. It's like, you can break it up however you like, really, but just getting those Ks under your belt is just so essential for that later fitness for those long swims. I'm not doing 200 meters, I'm doing 10K, so 10K a day shouldn't really be too much of an issue.
And how many sessions were you breaking that across? So 80K a week, what would that typically look like? How many sessions and how long would you be training for?
Well, that varied because, it was the holiday season and the pool opening and closing and that sort of stuff. So before the actual holiday season started in early December, I was doing, the standard sort of morning and night sessions. I was doing 9 times a week, and that was about it, really, just squeeze all the Ks into 9 sessions. I wasn't doing any gym because, again, my shoulders they're not going to cope with all of those Ks and a gym as well. So I was just doing recovery and swimming, and that was about it. And then, during the holiday season, we decided to do longer mornings, some afternoons, but mostly mornings. And it was just 2.5, 3 hour mornings.
Full on. And are there, what sort of pace are you swimming for most of those Ks? Is it kind of just below threshold, or is it above that? Is there much speed work? What would it typically look like?
Well, it's sort of a building process. You don't start off going flat out for 13 Ks. For a 3-hour session on your very first day. So that comes later. But, just sort of building slowly. So sitting at short rest pace was sort of common. We just sort of tick over. There's not really much resting. You don't really do much resting. Maybe in a 3-hour session, sit on the wall for maybe 10 minutes of that 3 hours in total. In a 2-hour session, you might sit for, 5 minutes. Sometimes you don't sit at all. Sometimes you just do a session will be 10K straight. And, you got to treat it like a race and build up. You build your race, you do it fast at the start, fast at the finish, whatever you decide to do. You treat it like however you want to race, or whatever your race strategy will be for whatever distance you're doing. It's good to get in and do that distance straight away. So if you're doing a 2K swim in the ocean and that's your first swim, it's good to just get in the pool and do a 2K like you would in the ocean, so you can get that sort of experience under your belt. Although it's different conditions, it's different scenarios, but if you can do that in the pool, then it's clear that you can do it in the ocean if all things go well. And if things don't go well, then you adapt and try to just do your best, really.
I'm looking at some of the sets here. This one made me laugh. So you've got I assume this probably isn't there's warm up before this as well, but the main set, it's you've got 10 100s on 115, then 30 seconds rest, then 8K build, and then 1K max. So it's just and that's your 10K.
No, there's no warm up before that. That's a 10K
Straight
race practice. Yeah, because in a race at the start, you sort of, there's no preamble before a race. You got your race briefing. That takes like 30 minutes. You're not really warmed up. You swing your arms, and that's about the best you get. So straight into it, and then straight into a building process, and then fast finish.
All right, that's impressive. And the other one I liked as well was, and I tried this. I nearly made it one set through short course. Right. It was the 100 on 130, 200 on 230, 300 on 3 minutes 30, and then 400 on 4 minutes 30, and it's got ×4 next to it. So
it's tough.
That is
it's sort of like 100 easy, and then it's like 200 of sort of tempo, 300 of fast, and then 400 at your race pace, and then repeat.
Yeah. That's I really like that set. It's kind of unrelenting. It just gets harder and harder and harder, and then I guess you go back down and get a little bit more rest, but it really sort of crescendos at the end there. So I like that set. So there's just some really challenging workouts. So I like seeing what guys at the very top end like yourself are doing, because it kind of makes you think, there's more that I can do here. And I don't know if you've heard of a guy, Dave Goggins. He's written this book recently, and he used to be an ex-Navy SEAL, and now does a lot of ultra marathon running. But he's just a really hard guy. And he talks about, like, he did this 100K race, and it was the first one that he did. He hadn't trained for it really at all, and he ended up just completely ruining himself, and he was throwing up blood and everything, and just there's sort of no filter with the pain. He'd just go through it, and he just wouldn't think twice about it. And it's kind of, after hearing stuff like that, it's good motivation to, you can do it. It's so mental compared to physical. Like, obviously the physical is important, but a lot of it is upstairs. What's happening in your mind.
Absolutely, I agree.
Yeah, did you ever find that when you're training that it's just a matter of just getting to the pool and getting it done, and not overthinking, if you're feeling tired and you're...
Yeah, absolutely. Well, sometimes it's just easy to just go to training and just do what you're told. Sometimes that's all you can do, and that's an achievement, getting up at 4:45 or 4:30 or whenever you're getting up, and then just going and doing what you're told and getting through the set. Sometimes that's it, and sometimes you can really push it because you're feeling great, and you've had a double shot coffee or whatever before training, and you're really ready to go. So you push it extra hard and you get fitter and stuff. But sometimes just turning up is better than not turning up at all. Yeah,
absolutely. Oh, yeah. I remember going through that. Even last year training for Rotto, there's sessions where you feel great, and there's sessions where you feel like you've just made no gain because the shoulders are sore and can't get going. But then, it all comes back around, and it's just, you've got to push through that, and you've still got to keep training. It's it's a key to making it work. And in terms of race strategy for the New Zealand swim, how did it play out for you? Was it what you expected, or is there anything you need to change midway through?
Well, not really. I was sort of ready to adapt because I've done that huge blocker over Christmas. I'm pretty aerobically fit at the moment, and whether or not it's the main limiting factor was whether or not I was strong enough and whether or not I had the speed. Those were the two limiting factors. I knew I had the fitness. So, I was just looking at other people and seeing how they go. I think I was sitting in third position, just cruising and ticking my arms over basically for the first 3 laps, just making sure I was keeping in contact with everyone and making sure we weren't going too slow or bridging the gap if someone decided to go, which happened once or twice. Just making sure I was there and just going around the course. And New Zealand was quite a cold course. It was 20 degrees, which is warm enough to not wear a wetsuit, but cold enough to feel the cold. So, I was just trying to keep my shoulders mobile. And then with a lap to go, I moved up into first and started pushing the pace a bit. And one other bloke went with me. And then again, I wasn't really aerobically challenged. I was just, starting to get a bit sore. And then I just decided with a kilometre to go that just, right, well, let's let's try and win this. I'm sitting in first now. I may as well just push it and make sure it's not a sprint finish because, as I said, I know I'm fit. It's just whether or not I have the speed, and I wasn't prepared to leave it to a last 100-meter finish or last 200-meter sprint finish with whoever, because in those scenarios it's really just who's the freshest, and I wasn't prepared to do that. So I took off with a kilometre to go, and I just put 30 seconds on the guy who came second. That was it. That was my race. Really, it was really very basic. I was just really responsive and aware of my own energy levels and aware of my own strength, and I really just backed myself to have the fitness to be able to just stay with everybody and not have to push the pace, and just have enough strength and enough speed just to take off and then hold them off towards the line. That was sort of it. That was my race strategy.
It sounds like you had a lot of confidence going into it, especially having such a good build up to the race, and your shoulders had been a lot better than what they were 12 months ago. Is that the feeling that you took into it?
Not really. Well, yes and no. Yes, because as you said, I did that huge block of training, but no, because that was my first big 10K open water swim on these shoulders. So I haven't done any long 10Ks. Obviously, I've done them in training, but in race scenario with a big suit on, it's obviously a little bit different. So I was a little bit untested with my shoulders, and I was wary of whether or not they would hold up. And given the cold, and like everything sort of freezes up, and all your blood goes into your torso and your shoulders and your arms and your toes, there's no blood in those. So I was really wary of that, and I've learned a bit. I've think my suit was a little bit too tight, so I'm going to be wearing a looser suit for my upcoming races because I just don't think the circulation was there. So yeah, I was really confident in my abilities in the last 5K. It was just getting to that 5K, because as I said, I was feeling really fit, but I wasn't feeling very fast, and I didn't really have that speed because I'd just come off a huge block of training. So all I did was get to 5K, and then I backed myself from there.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's race confidence, isn't it? Just being having the recent races. Like every year in January, I normally race this 3-day meet here around Melbourne. And day one, I've got cobwebs that I need to shake off and swim okay. And then day two, starting to get better. And then by day 3, it's like I've figured out how to race again, or I've remembered how to race. It's just needing to do more of that than as long as you got the fitness there. So it's good that you had that as a training run before next week, which is Australian champs. And you were saying that it's quite a deep, very deep field this year.
Yeah, it is. It's huge. Anyone might be like 15 athletes who could get in the top 4 for that selection position. So really could be anyone. So it's going to be anyone's game.
Has it ever been this stacked, or is it sort of something that's caused so many swimmers to be focused on this year, and or there's just a lot more swimmers who are at that very top level here?
Well, yeah, that's been the state of Australian open water swimming, really. It's sort of been a few really, really good juniors, maybe like 3 or 4 years ago, and that's been sort of building, and now it's sort of hitting the crescendo where there's, 18, 19, 20-year-olds who are ready and raring to go, and that's just it. Open water is a growing sport. It only got added to the Olympics in 2008, so it's had, three or 4 Olympic cycles now, so it's just growing, and it continues to grow. I think it's the fastest growing sport in the world at the moment.
Yeah, that's awesome. You definitely see it around, at the open water swims over summer. There's so many swims and there's so many people there, which is awesome. And it's just such a great sport, isn't it? I love swimming in the ocean, and I did my first open water race for the season last week, and there's 5,000 people who enter the pier to pub and do this swim.
Oh yeah,
and it's just it's not worth your time. It's only 1.2K. It's too short for you, but it's just such an awesome time, and it's great to see that open water swimming's just had such a big increase in popularity over the last few years, and we've certainly seen it. I mean, I've probably seen it really start to come into a lot of clubs as well. Normally the clubs are mostly focused on the pool competitions only, but now there's definitely a lot more movement towards some open water clubs, or there's different squads for those guys. And I mean, you train with quite a few good open water swimmers up on the Gold Coast, don't you?
Yeah, I do.
So you've got there's quite a few there. And then what clubs do you train with over in Perth?
I train with Perth City.
And they've got their focus is mostly open water as well.
Yeah. They've got an even bigger squad than here on the Gold Coast. Their squad is huge, so it's really good.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Well, good luck for next week, and you're doing Rottnest again. So
yeah, I am
back around. And is that and let's say you make the New Zealand team, you'll still do Rottnest?
I hope so. I mean, if New Zealand turn around and say we're sending you on a plane for this race at this date and it coincides with Rotto, then obviously I'll have to put the international race first. But other than that, I will be doing Rotto again. Yeah.
Yeah, that's exciting. Well, good luck for it, and it's been awesome to see you become New Zealand champion and the progression over the last 12 months. Now that your shoulders are good, and it's really exciting to see where you're going. So good luck for it, and I appreciate you coming back on the podcast.
Thanks for listening to the Effortless Swimming Podcast. If you'd like us to help you become a faster, more efficient swimmer, go to www.effortlessswimming.com.